Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa, a channel, a platform, and a modality where we apply the principles of philosophy, spirituality, and mysticism to rapid lifestyle transformation, to moving the needle in your life, and to actually creating your life's the masterpiece that you came for. Ladies and gentlemen, you didn't come to be limited. You didn't come to live in fear. You didn't come not to do things, but rather you came to experience it all, and you came to feel all of the emotions of life, and you came to use those to figure out what it is that you do want, and then to create a masterpiece. This channel is all about helping you do that, specifically in the realm of rapid lifestyle transformation, in getting you off the prison grid, free from a job and a boss, in order to create the life of your dreams, to create a masterpiece. But it's not only about economic issues, because there's so many other issues that people feel are standing in their way to living a full life. There's relationships, there's career, and so on and so forth. There is financial, there are phobias, and we did get a lot of great responses to our video that we made about 2 videos ago about how to address a persistent emotion. And I got a lot of questions via email, and we got a lot of comments. And I actually got a comment from a subscriber that I actually want to dedicate the video today to. It's a comment that's talking about certain barriers in the prescriber's life. And what I want to do is sort of offer a template and a framework to show you how we can actually apply the principles that we put out on that video. So this is going to be a big video. You won't want to miss it. But first, I'd like to ask you, as always, if you find value in our material, please, of course, watch the videos. Please like the videos, and please subscribe to our channel below. Not only will you get alerts for all of our videos, you'll be joining a group of master manifestors, of people who are going forward in our journeys together to rapid lifestyle transformation, to becoming the people that we want to become, that we came for. Not only will you be throwing your hat into that ring, but you'll be helping me get the word out. The last few videos had a lot of traction. We got about 1,000 views on the last video about stoicism and about observing your emotions, and that got us a lot of subscribers to the channel, and more people are discovering our work. It is a work, ladies and gentlemen, whose time has come, so please do be part of that pathway to getting this out to more people, because it's about love, ladies and gentlemen. It's about wanting to share what we know with mankind so that we can benefit as many people as possible, so that we can get as many of people as possible out of their limitations. So I will give you a moment to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for subscribing. So, a subscriber reached out to me on my video that was entitled "The Greatest Secret Metaphysical Technique to Dissolve Trauma and Achieve Your Aims." And if you haven't watched that video, I will provide a link. I'd encourage all of you to watch that video. It went not only into law of assumption, it went not only into philosophy, but it went into stoicism, and it gave specific modalities and methodologies to basically unwinding compound emotions that are basically standing in your way. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always an emotion. It's always a feeling. It's always a persistent negative emotion that's standing in our way from actually taking the first step to accomplishing our dreams. Even the first metaphysical step, which would be getting into the state, which would be imagining it, which would be practicing the feeling of it, but it could also be something like picking up the telephone. And that's another discussion for another day. We're going to talk a lot about taking action, because I got questions also about, as strange as it may seem, some people in this modality think that if you take action towards your desire, then that nullifies your being in state. Because if you're taking action towards it, then that implies that you're not in the state somehow. This is absolutely not true, and I believe in the next video after this, we're going to address that very point. But today I wanted to address this question from the subscriber, because it is urgent for this subscriber, and I want to see this subscriber gain traction and show themselves, and also show all of you how you can work through these. So I'm going to just read the comment, then we will comment upon it. The subscriber said, fascinating. I suffer from agoraphobia. That means feeling panicky about going too far from home. And it just shows me the brilliance of the medical system and the psychiatry system and so on and so forth. By the way, disclaimer right out the door here, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a medical practitioner of any kind, and I cannot give medical advice, so this is not medical advice. Take this as you will. Take this as a fireside chat with a friend, but it's also a friend who has worked through many of these emotional blocks himself and who has applied these materials. So take the advice that you will, but always, if you're seeking medical advice, always seek it from a licensed practitioner. But that being said, for the legal aspects, the medical profession is hilarious, and I do work in my day job with the pharmaceutical industry and so on and so forth. And it's very funny. Like, for example, the diagnosis they give: dry eyes. Well, yeah, I know I have dry eyes. That's why I came to see you. Bipolar disorder, because I have two. I swing between two moods. Well, I know that. Agoraphobia, I fear going out. Okay, we know that, but these diagnoses and titles for diseases have nothing to do with the root cause of those diseases and don't point out the root cause of the diseases. And that is basically an indicator of the paradigm, so to speak, of modern medicine and modern psychiatry. They don't point out the root causes of the conditions. They, in fact, want you to identify with that condition. For example, when they tell you, for example, God forbid, you have cancer, they want people to identify with that you are that diagnosis. But you are not that, and I think it's far more harmful to give that diagnosis a label. Again, just my opinion as a lay person. I'm not a medical practitioner. But agoraphobia, what is that? Who told you that you have that? Because the first step to actually allowing yourself to take a step into the unknown, and that's what it is, that's what's going to be, taking a step into the unknown. Because the unknown, ladies and gentlemen, the unknown, my friend, is where all the goodies are. And it's this identification with a diagnosis that, as I see it, is basically standing in the doorway of you walking out that door and going into the unknown. So, the first thing I'd recommend is observe your feelings and your thoughts when you say, I suffer from agoraphobia. What does that feel like? Does that feel good? If it feels good, then by all means continue. If there's a negative emotion there, observe that. And then start digging deeper. And we'll show you how to do that as we go through this. But I feel panicky about going too far from home. And that's good, by the way, that you can identify that feeling. When you think about going far from home, what's the feeling like? Where is it located in your body? The first step is to just sit there and observe that. This could even take a few days, because what it probably is a compound emotion based upon trauma. And what we don't encourage on this channel, and indeed Joe Dispenza and the other law of assumption, law of attraction greats, the spiritual greats, don't encourage you to go and dig back in your past and try to figure out where that trauma came from. Although you can, and many psychiatrists will recommend that you do this, but you don't have to go back into your past and ask yourself, where did that trauma come from? Because you're here today, and most likely, first of all, your memory's wrong. It's been proven and established in science that 90% of what people remember is not actually what happened in the first place. It's all colored by our biases, and for biases, you can read Nassim Nicholas Taleb and others who talk about these logical fallacies and biases and so on and so forth. But that's not where you want to go. So, what you want to do in the beginning is just observe that complex of emotions. It could probably be a strong emotion or set of emotions. And what I'm going to guess is it's most likely somewhere in your solar plexus. It's a pain in the stomach. It's a speeding up of the heart and a tightness in the chest. And or it could be all these things. It could be a tightness in the neck. That's where it's going to reside. And what I want you to do is, when you feel that fear of going out, I want you to say, okay, I'm going to completely focus on these feelings. And when you completely focus on it, at that second, no thought can enter. So what you've done is you've separated the feeling from the thought. And that's good, because then the thoughts can't start running rampant, because it's usually a vicious feedback circle. I feel worried, let's say. Then I think about feeling worried, and then I ask, well, why do I feel worried? And my thoughts are shooting all over the place. You can see this, by the way, on a brain scan. And Joe Dispenza has these. And that's why he teaches people how to get into brainwave coherence, because what happens is your brain is firing incoherently. And each time you have a certain familiar thought that you agree with, it sends signals to hormones in the body which shoot off different commands. And that's why you feel the speeding up of the pulse and so on and so forth, perhaps sweating, hyperventilating, tightness in the chest, and so on and so forth. If you can stop the thoughts, you've already won half the battle. And those feelings, many people say, like in the Sedona method, that it'll go away of its own accord within 90 seconds, but a complex emotion could take a lot longer. We're going to give you techniques on how to actually shorten that, and one good one is to actually try to pretend that you actually appreciate or like the feeling, what we talked about in the last video. So you can say, I like this feeling. Now that might not work. You might get another thought saying, no, this is horrible and I can't like it. In that case, you've just got to follow that observation process. Could take a few days, but you definitely don't have to be trapped in this. But anyway, this limits my life. I want to go out and meet new friends in a relationship somewhere. Well, of course, because this is a negative emotion that every time you shoot off that rocket of desire, the negative emotion comes back and says, no, you can't do that. And you've practiced it so much that you're now subconsciously addicted to the negative feelings. So even when you try to get away from that, it's going to be uncomfortable. So right now, unfortunately, because we've practiced this, we're not in a position where you can just go from this to bliss. We're not there. We're in a position where you have to choose between what feels the worst, what feels the crappiest. So does it feel worse to actually try to go outside and go do something, or does it feel worse to sit in your house and just succumb to this emotion? You have to answer that question yourself, but I think we both know what the answer to that question is. You want to go out and do something. So sometimes you just got to say, screw this, I don't care how I feel, I'm going to step into the unknown. And you know what? If a negative consequence happens from that, you just take that as feedback, and then you try to do it again and again, and you regulate your action according to the feedback that you get. So, you said, I think I'm discovering I have a lot of subconscious fears that may come up as I go somewhere. Now, I don't know what they are, but I do notice that my fear of leaving home makes me feel like a lost child without anywhere safe to run to. Now, that's a great starting point. You know how it makes you feel, but let me tell you a secret about the subconscious. People who watch this channel will know this, especially those of you who've watched it from the early days. Remember, there's no duality. I have a secret for you. Come here, I'll tell it to you. There's no subconscious. There's nothing subconscious. Because as Abraham Hicks teaches and taught about this many times, if a thought is so minute that you don't notice it and it creates no emotional feedback, then it's not a big enough player to have any vibrational consequence whatsoever, any vibrational charge. But every time you quote-unquote subconsciously think this thought, that's could be non-detectable, you will get emotions from that. So there's nothing really subconscious. Everything will come to consciousness, and when it comes to consciousness, you can deal with it right there. And then this goes back to what the Stoics taught. I talked about in our last video where one of the Stoic philosophers was on a ship, and there was a storm, and the Stoic philosopher had a negative emotion on his face. His face became pale. And someone asked him, well, why did you have that negative emotion if you're a Stoic and you know that nothing on this earth has any real value? And he said, well, he read a passage from Epictetus, who basically said, and we're paraphrasing here, that even the sage, or that perfect being, that theoretical perfect being of Stoicism, when he hears a loud sound, he will react. Now, I wouldn't call that a thought. I'd call that a visceral instinct. And by now, you may have been practicing these negative thoughts so much that you don't even need a thought to trigger it. A simple association or a symbol or even something like seeing a color can trigger that whole cascade of negative emotions. And you'll notice this. And you might not even know what triggers it. And that's okay, because we don't have to go back and figure out what are those subconscious thoughts that trigger that. Those are going to be triggered by a symbol. And remember, this is basically embedded into our evolutionary hardware. It's called the reptilian brain, and that's the part of the brain that relates to the nervous system and so on and so forth. And all of this basically happens of its own accord. That's why the Stoics also said that even the sensations of the body and the breath do not touch the mind or the hegemonikon. And we could associate that hegemonikon actually with the frontal lobe of the brain. This is what we want to be in charge. We don't want the reptilian brain to be in charge, because that's animalistic. We're above that. So what can we do? We can't go in and change the hardware of the reptilian brain. We can't change patterns that have been embedded for years. But what we can do is change our thoughts about those patterns, and then that basically starves them of energy. So, for example, you can understand this logically. Let me just give you a crazy example. Let's say every time you see the color red, you get into anxiety and you start shaking, you get nervous. Well, what we've been doing, and what psychiatrists probably encourage us to do, is let's try to stop thinking about it. Let's not ignore this. No, this feeling is bad. I shouldn't feel anxious. And what that does is perpetuates the cycle. And you don't do anything about basically blocking that. And so the same thing will happen again and again. It says Abraham Hicks talked about your vibration about anything's where you last left it. So if you got triggered yesterday and you felt nervous and you didn't do anything to short circuit that, then the next time you see it, it'll be even a little bit more intense. And then we go into addiction, because your body is used to it. Therefore, even though it feels bad, your body is familiar and comfortable with that bad feeling, so it's addicted to it. So it's going to need a little bit more every time to get that same feeling, just like heroin, just like crack, so to speak. So you're going to actually, the worry is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's going to reflect in your life and on your body. It's going to spill out. It's going to reflect in your health, unless you short circuit it. And now the only way to short circuit is what Vadim Zeland in Reality Transurfing calls the indirect method. You can't say, I need to stop worrying, because that's actually just giving another negative feedback to your body, and it's giving fuel to that. It's what Eckhart Tolle called the pain body. And there comes a point where there's only one solution to the pain body, and that's waking up to it and becoming conscious to it. And the earlier you wake up to it, and then you bring that loving, non-judgmental awareness to the physical pattern, and your thoughts will stop about it, and your evaluation will stop, then eventually that will get smaller and smaller. And sometimes it can go away within a day, depending on the trauma. So when you start to feel that group of emotions, what you first want to do is just breathe into it. Even Hawkins, the great writer of Power versus Force, said just breathe into the emotion. Breathe into the feeling and completely observe that. And don't try to do anything with it yet, because what you're doing now is you're taking away some of the compound energy by refusing to have an opinion about it. As Marcus Aurelius says, you can refuse to have an opinion about something, and therefore you're not having a negative opinion about it, and therefore you're automatically bringing in love. And love is the solution to this. Love is the solution to everything, and love is what is going to end this pattern for you. So, hope you understand me just a little bit here. But I also have a strong sense of self that can take over in these times if I'm prepared to go, and the happiness that I'm doing something that I want. That's good. You can ride that, because at the end of the day, you want to have reasons to go outside of your house, and you want to just do it. You want to do this inner work, But you also some days just want to say, screw it, I'm going out. And then show yourself that usually nothing negative will happen. For example, you can do this in small bursts. Like first, if you want, you can go to the store and just say, you know what, I'm going to walk to the store, I'm going to go in, and I'm going to look at some stuff in the store for 10 minutes, then I'll go home. The next day, you can do it for 15 minutes. Then you can try to talk to people. You can do this in a very slow manner that will sort of get you accustomed to getting into the unknown, and before you know it, that's another way that's going to basically make you a new person and then make these reactions a thing of the past. But sometimes my emotions get the best of me and I have to turn back if I'm walking somewhere and go home. And this is, by the way, it's mainly an issue in the first world, because people talk about first world problems. Well, I'd hate to say this, and some law of assumption coaches are going to be horrified, but the lack of exigency and the multiplicity of choices sometimes can be a hindrance for us, because we were not sent here as humans to basically freeze in a multiplicity of choices. It's like Buridan's ass. It's the Buridan's donkey. It's a medieval story about a donkey who had 2 stacks of hay on both sides of him, and they were both equidistant, so he couldn't choose, and he starved to death. We have so many options today that sometimes we just become apathetic, and I say apathetic in the modern sense of the word, and that actually leads to depression, ladies and gentlemen. All you have to do is look at some of the children of wealthy people. They don't have negative emotion. They don't have something to struggle against or for, and so therefore they're just stuck and they become depressed. That in itself can become a problem. And there are many people who have to go out and go to work. They can't just turn around and go home, but some of us have the choice to just go out and then turn around and go home. Perhaps if you actually artificially set up something that you had to go out and do, like a job or something like this, that might also be a help to help you get out of this. And it's reminiscent of How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. He talks about one of the cures of depression is to start thinking about other people. Start thinking about what you can go and do for other people. Get your mind off your egoic situation. I know this sounds tough, but this is tough love. Try to think about other people. If you're not working or you don't have to work, go see if you can volunteer somewhere and see how that's going to help you feel better. I promise you, you're going to feel much better when you do that, and a lot of your other fears will subside because you simply have to get out and go somewhere. So that's one little solution also. But feeling fight or flight is not something easy to handle. It's a basic survival mode that comes from the amygdala, of course. It's the reptilian brain. So and we said we do take, the person takes meds for anxiety and so on and so forth. We're not going to say anything about that because that's a medical situation, but certainly see what you can do if you want to start taking your own mental state into your charge, and then perhaps you won't need substances, but you have to do this slowly. When our ancestors were becoming humans, they had this primal thing going on with threats and so on and so forth. It's really hard to feel and observe that. Anyone want to comment? So basically what we basically said. So I want to just give the solution here, which is very simple. It's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. We're not going to say we understand you. I'm coming at this from an angle of compassion and really wanting to help you. First of all, do the inner work. Sit down in meditation, get quiet. You know, for these situations, reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and listening to Eckhart Tolle's lectures, you can find a lot of them on YouTube. When he addresses anxiety, he addresses so many situations. These will really help you because what it is bringing that loving presence which is the true you, by the way. It's not that egoic you, but it's the true you. It's bringing that presence to come and observe that. And when that feeling comes up, just observe the feeling. So I have this feeling that I'm afraid to go outside. Okay. And don't even try to stop thoughts, by the way. Sometimes you can actually go into your head, in your consciousness, and say, okay, chatter, I want to observe the thoughts about this. And you can even analyze it. If you're calm enough, you can actually bring your logical mind to bear, and you can start basically gently analyzing. So, what is it exactly that I am afraid of? Is there anything that I can do to address some of the fears? Is there any precaution that I can take, but still take steps into the unknown? And then just go back into stillness and see how you feel. You can actually conduct a dialogue with yourself, go into the stillness, then go out of the stillness. Still, stillness is in the substratum. It's in the background. But then as you do that, you can start, this is another form of meditation, you can contemplate. You can say, okay, what is it that I'm afraid of? Does this really make sense? What are the chances of this happening? If we didn't already, another book that I'd recommend is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And you can take these modalities, and you do that when you have time. This is the energetic work. You just get present. Now here's the real needle mover. You're going to want to go out and do like we said, start by just going to the store for a few minutes. You're going to say, you know what, today I'm going to go to the store for 15 minutes and I don't care what happens. And your emotions are probably going to go haywire. Just be in the present, observe that, and do it. That's what we call taking steps into the unknown. It's what Krishnamurti called freedom from the known. And guess what? The only way to become a different person, the only way to become the person that you want and take on the persona that you want, is by going into the unknown. Your old self has to die, metaphorically and metaphysically. And death can be scary and painful. It's what Neville Goddard talked about, that Moses, it said that Moses wrote the Old Testament, but parts of it. But he wrote about his own death. He had to die to himself, and he died so deeply that they still to this day cannot find his tabernacle, cannot find where he's buried. You figuratively and metaphysically have to die to the old self. You have to resurrect as the new person that you want to be. And that's a person who can go out and meet the joys and the challenges of life by using these tools, which are very spiritual tools, very metaphysical tools, and they're very actionable, and it doesn't take turning to anyone else besides your own inner guide, your own inner being. So do that. Bring presence to the feeling of it. Know what it's like as it comes up in your body, and use the tools that we talked about in this video and the previous videos. If you feel that is painful, then just say, I love this feeling. You know what? This feeling isn't actually bad. If, let's say, you have tightness in chest, well, this feels like kind of like a massage, you know. Some people go to spas and they do massage their chests and so on and so forth. Well, what's the difference? And if you're having a heart palpitation or your heart's beating very quickly, you can say, you know what? I have the same feeling when I'm excited. I have the same feeling when I'm running. It's a good thing that my heart is pumping blood, and I can feel this as excitement. Bashar even said to a questioner who said they were nervous, I remember a few years ago, Bashar said, perhaps that's not anxiety. That might be excitement masquerading as anxiety. And the final thought I want to leave you with in this video, remember, if you have a problem or you have a negative emotion, the biggest negative emotion has the biggest provision, and it has the biggest reward and support and plan just on the other side of that emotion, indeed connected with the emotion. So if you have a negative emotion, call a friend and say, hey, I'm having a negative emotion, and that means that there's a great provision on the other side. You don't have to go analyze and investigate what's that provision. Just breathe into it and say, you know what? There's something just a lot better on the other side of this. What could it be? Well, it could be power. It could be presence and reason that's coming to me now. Instead of this fear of going out, I'm going to go out and take this bull by the horns, and it could be a blast of enthusiasm. That's what's just on the other side of this emotion, and all I have to do is observe it, and it's not an emotion, and I am already on the other side of the mountain. I promise you. Follow your heart, bring love to it, observe it, don't listen to anyone else, and I promise you, you will be over this sooner than you think. Remember, I'm always available. I'm doing coaching calls. I take people hand in hand through these modalities and methodologies to get you across the finish line quicker than you thought possible for any objectives that you're trying to meet. I've helped a wide range of clients, and we are having good reviews from our clients. So I will put my email in the description for coaching. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for being with us all as we go through this journey of life and of rapid lifestyle transformation. Until very soon, ladies and gentlemen, this is Javier. Have a great weekend, and I will see you very soon. Ciao.